So, hello, everyone. Welcome to the inaugural DeepCrawl Deep Dive series, looking specifically at updates from our platform. Thanks very much for joining us. Happy to have you all here. My name is Dave Brown. For those of you that don't know me, which is probably most of you, I first joined DeepCrawl way back in 2015. And I'm aware of many hats internally, where I'm now hosting this webinar series, which I'm super excited about, alongside my role in the commercial team. So I know that you didn't all sign up to hear my Cockney accent for an hour, so you'll be pleased to know that we are joined today by our amazing head of product, Alec Bertram. Alec, say hi.
Hello.
He's going to talk us through some of the updates to the DeepCrawl platform that happened in 2020, a little bit of a taster of what's to come. Before we kind of dive into the bulk of the webinar, I'll give a little bit of context for everyone about our platform, how we see it, where we've kind of come from, where it is today, and we'll do a couple of little housekeeping items. So there is a Q&A box at the bottom of the page for you all to submit questions during the webinar, and we'll answer those at the end, time permitting. There's also going to be a short survey at the end of the webinar. It takes less than a minute to complete, so we'd really appreciate it if you can fill that out. It will help us tailor the program for the future. And lastly, this will be available on demand. So we'll send out the recording after, and there'll also be a write-up of the webinar, which will be posted to the website early next week. Right, so let's take a quick look into some context around DeepCrawl, where we've come from, and where we're at the moment. So DeepCrawl's mission to solve technical SEO challenges began around 10 years ago to address a very specific problem, which was crawling large-scale websites. Since then, obviously, the SEO industry has moved on considerably, and so has our platform. But our mission stays the same: to solve technical SEO challenges facing our customers today. And our platform and the way that it's has been designed and will continue to be designed is reflective of our philosophy, which is to help customers detect and prioritize key technical SEO issues and opportunities at scale, protect your traffic and revenue by integrating SEO QA into your existing development pipeline, and then connect that all together with business intelligence tools and reporting, as well as support from our professional services team. So if we go to the next slide, Alec, we'll see a very high-level overview of what that means for our technology. So it means that we've been working hard on building out hubs that will help solve all of the technical challenges that our customers are facing. So the SEO and marketing team will be, obviously day-to-day in the analytics hub. The development team will be more in the automation hub. And again, that is all supported by our connections with things like Data Studio, BigQuery, which I know Alec is going to talk about, and then supported by our professional services team to extract the most value out of the platform. So hopefully that gives everyone some context and background in terms of where DeepCrawl's come from, where we are at the moment, and will help kind of frame the conversation that we're going to have today. So as I mentioned, I know none of you signed up to listen to me for an hour, so I'm going to hand over to easily one of my top 3 Kiwis of all time, the other 2 being Jonah Lomu and the current Prime Minister. Love Jacinda's work. So here he is, Mr. Alec Bertram. Take it away.
Thanks, Dave. Cool. So, as Dave said, the idea of the DeepCrawl Deep Dive series is going to be a regular webinar where we will go sort of deep into products, what product is doing, and why, I suppose. Because this is the first one, and because we had a lot of big updates last year, I wanted to spend some time going over some of the big, impactful releases that we did last year, and then towards the end we'll go through what you can expect to see in the near future. So, like Dave said, the 3 kind of pillars that form the DeepCrawl product strategy, the DeepCrawl company direction, that we're going to be helping you protect the revenue, the traffic that you have, that you're driving from organic search. We're going to help you to detect the big risks that you should be mitigating, or the big opportunities that you should be kind of pursuing, and connect that all through to everywhere you need your data, your insights. DeepCrawl is going to have connectors, and as well as connecting kind of your SEO strategy with your wider business strategy. So everything I'll show you is along those lines. The first major release that we're going to go through today, and actually it was the first major release of 2020, is Automator. So in case you haven't heard about Automator or what it does, why we built it, the core kind of challenge that a lot of our clients face, and a lot of big businesses face actually, is where you have a relatively big development and engineering team. And these days, everyone's doing agile methodologies, which effectively means just releasing lots and lots of small stuff very, very quickly. So you'll have a big engineering team constantly releasing things to the website. You'll have a relatively small SEO team relative to a big engineering team. And the way it's supposed to work is that the engineering team should tell the SEO team when they are going to be making changes to the sites that might impact technical SEO health. And what's supposed to happen then is that the SEO team should check the staging site, should sort of do a comprehensive audit of the development environment to check that whatever those changes were haven't negatively impacted things. Now that doesn't always happen because either the engineering team forgets to tell the SEO team, the engineering team is working on something that they don't think will have a negative impact, or maybe they're working on something that doesn't have a negative impact, but there's side effects. And we see quite often, a development robots.txt gets pushed to production, or no index tags get left on and go to production. Or the third thing that happens is just that SEO teams are generally busy and don't have time to check every single release before it goes live, or before it needs to go live. Especially in very, very agile organizations, you can be seeing 10, 20, 30 releases a day sometimes. And it's really difficult to check and audit every change that happens. So the idea of Automator is that we will integrate directly into your engineering team's development and release pipeline, so your CI/CD pipeline. And every time that we detect that sort of any code changes have been made to a development environment, we'll crawl those, check them. If they're not going to have negative impacts on SEO, or they're not a big risk, then Automator is completely silent. No one knows it was there, and we don't tell anyone. But when there are big issues, we will immediately sort of know everyone who's relevant about it. I guess we can notify the engineering team, we can notify SEOs, people higher up. And in what Automator was designed for, and in some of our clients, they also implement a way for Automator to completely block code. If a high-risk change is about to go to production, we can literally stop the code from going into production. So I should have switched to the slide a little bit earlier, but the way that Automator generally works is that you will, as an SEO, define the tests, the things that we're looking for. It gets integrated into your CI pipeline. What you can see on the screen is a bunch of individual releases that have been made, the things that were wrong. We have fail, warning, and pass. And then, yeah, it kind of silently works in the background. So I'm not going to sit here and watch the whole GIF, I suppose, but that's broadly how it works.
Sorry, I was on mute, Alec. I'm just getting the hang of remote working after a year of being remote working. Obviously, this is obviously very interesting, and I think I speak to a lot of potential customers all of the time, and they say, you know, we have these problems where a developer will make a change to the website and it, you know, messes up our structured data or changes our internal linking structure, or, you know, they just release a bunch of like broken links. So what is the, and sometimes that means that there's friction, right? So what happens if like an engineering team don't actually want to, you know, add this to their pipeline, something that's going to slow them down, or they just have no interest in SEO? How can this help?
Yeah. So we have actually had that in the past, and we have clients who operate in that type of environment where for one reason or another, engineering teams don't want anything to do with SEOs. The Automator can still help, and this is actually also helpful in an agency kind of client context as well, where Automator doesn't need to take any time in the engineering cycle. The sort of minimum amount of time it can take is 1 second. And it doesn't need to alert any engineers. It doesn't need to block code. What it can do, though, is kind of be, for want of a better word, be a spy inside of your engineering workflow, and let the SEO team know what's being worked on, when problems are coming down the pipeline, and sort of tell them when they should be aware of things coming up. Like I said, it's really useful as well in an agency or consulting context, because when I was an SEO consultant, I had no idea what my clients were doing. They would never tell me, no matter how many times I asked. So Automator kind of gives you a view into what's happening, even if the engineers don't want to use Automator, or they don't want to necessarily communicate that well. Cool. So let's move on to the next release that we did recently. So Data Explorer, this is a relatively new release that not everyone will have seen yet, and we released it pretty much at the end of last year. So one of the big things through talking to our clients that we found is that a lot of people will come into DeepCrawl, export data to Excel, and then one of the main things they do inside of Excel is create pivot tables or do sort of custom analysis. And that's obviously fine. That's part of the day-to-day workflow of SEOs. It has some problems, though. Obviously, if you have a very large crawl, you can't open more than 1 million rows in Excel without being a power user. And that overall, that process takes time to do, and you don't necessarily have the same kind of filtering or the same definitions as DeepCrawl might. So we know our broken page definition might be more sophisticated than what you can necessarily build in Excel. So we built Data Explorer to try to start replacing some of that to doing sort of offline in Excel. So as you can see, you kind of come in, you select what your primary dimension is, you select which metrics you want to see and which calculations you want to do. As you can see, it still has the beta label on, and it's still actually in active development, even though almost all of our clients have access to this now. So you will see further improvements to it over the next, we think, 6 to 8 weeks. And then all of our main features are going to be released to it. So it's a really powerful tool, and this is along the lines of the analysis features we'll be releasing this year. Allow you to sort of customize what you're seeing or replace some of the analysis you're doing already offline.
And Alec, quick question. We've had some questions kind of coming in, so that's awesome. Please do keep them coming with the QA box at the bottom. But a question on this: are you able to see the sections that are like got the highest or lowest of like a certain metric. So for example, sections with the most, missing H1 tags or like the longest titles, stuff like that.
Not today. So you can see this GIF that I took yesterday afternoon only has average counts and some as the main aggregations we do. In the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're releasing a big tranche of new analyses that are kind of enabled in this interface. So we will be adding that along with a bunch of other stuff. We're looking forward to it. Okay. Cool. So Data Explorer, we'll come back to this a few other times later because it's kind of the center of a lot of our other updates. Segmentation. Segmentation was released mid last year, and I suppose it's not a new analysis, it's not new data, but it is a way to see your existing kind of crawls and crawl data, and hopefully save you some time. So the big challenge that a lot of our clients face, particularly those who are in big companies or who, to some extent, this applies to smaller companies as well, but SEOs will typically be focused on a specific part of the website. Maybe you're focused on a given market, maybe you're focused on a given product category. So to use some examples, if you work in IKEA and you're an SEO, more than likely you'll be focused on IKEA UK or IKEA France, and you won't necessarily care about all the other markets that exist. You won't necessarily care about broken pages that exist in IKEA Germany. That's just an example. IKEA may care about worldwide broken pages. And traditionally with DeepCrawl, you would need to play around with the crawl settings to try to get a crawl of the specific thing you care about. And it's not always possible, particularly if you're looking at a products category or something like that. So what segmentation does is it allows you to kind of define what type of pages make up a given portion of the site, and then see your crawl through the lens of just that. So you're effectively making sub crawls. A really cool thing about it is that, and you can see this on the screen now, is that you can create segments based on more or less anything that we know about. So URL is an obvious one, but if your URL structure isn't great, you can also use things like page titles, page descriptions, or more or less anything that we can extract from the page, which helps a lot of websites. And the other thing that segmentation does is it is literally a subcrawl. So as you can see, we're trending data over time, so you're able to see broken pages within a certain segment over time. It's not. It is a kind of a first-class citizen of the DeepCrawl ecosystem, I suppose. So yeah, this can really help both big companies where you've got multiple SEOs focused on different areas, but also in smaller companies. If you're a small e-commerce business, you are almost certainly going to care much more about issues and things that happen in your big revenue pages, and much less about broken pages or broken links that happen within the blog or the help content. Yeah, so that's segmentation is available to most accounts at the moment. And if you don't have access, you should contact your CSM because we're rolling it out quickly.
A quick question before we move on.
Yeah.
Obviously, you mentioned that you can create a segment based on whatever you want, right? Whether it's a URL path or whether it's any one of these metrics that are on the screen at the moment. But what if there's something that doesn't fall into that, right? Like if it's like a template tag or like a specific brand that you want to create a segment for, is that possible?
Yes, it is with more or less customization. So, so another thing that we're not going to cover today that we rolled out 3 or 4 months ago was the ability, or DeepCrawl will just extract a bunch of additional attributes about your page from structured data or just the page in general. So we now have things like brands, author, price of products, category of product, I think, and those just appear in the drop down that you can see now. If it's something that DeepCrawl doesn't know about, so sort of a custom extraction, there is a way to do it. Effectively, you'd need to use a custom JavaScript injection and format the thing you want to extract properly. So we can do that today. If you get in touch with support, just hit the question mark in the bottom corner. Or further down the line, in about 6 months, we're going to be adding a lot more ability to customize the metrics that DeepCrawl has. So yeah, look forward to that. Also, another cool thing, which I don't think we show on the screen, is that segmentation can be used in the Data Explorer. So after you've defined, let's go back a couple of slides. After you've defined your segments, you can see this here. You can then compare your segments within the Data Studio based on Data Explorer, based on whatever you like. So here we have, for a travel website, it looks like we're comparing 4 different segments against each other. Okay, let's crack on though. Core Web Vitals, very important. Just to introduce Core Web Vitals for people who may not be 100% up to date with what's happening. So Google, I suppose, for the last 10 years, Google has been using their influence and I guess basically their monopoly on organic traffic to improve the web in whatever way they see fit. So if we think back, maybe I guess it was 5 or 6 years ago, Google was the main driver in businesses rolling out really good mobile websites and good mobile experiences, because they said, hey, the world's going mobile, you're not going to rank as well on mobile devices if you don't have a good mobile site. Or if we think about maybe 2017, 2018, Google again used their kind of power to say, if you don't have a website on HTTPS, you're not going to rank as well. So then we saw masses and masses of websites move over to HTTPS, where they weren't before, even though security is really important. Google is using this carrot of, we control 50, 60, 70% of your revenue. So do what we say. So Core Web Vitals is the latest one of these ways that Google is using their influence to improve the web. And they're basically trying to improve user experience. Now, we can't necessarily measure user experience. We can't say whether a user had a good experience or a bad experience by measuring things. But Google is using these 3 heuristic metrics. So they're saying that your page needs to load quickly, that it needs to be immediately interactive, and visually things shouldn't move around. So to give you an example of interactivity and visual stability, interactivity being when you load up a page, if you try to scroll around on your screen and the page doesn't immediately react because it's still loading, that would be a long input delay, and so you would score poorly on the first input delay metric. In visual stability, we see this a lot today with news publishers. You will load up a news site. There's so many ads that as you start to scroll, ads will load, images will load, and it will push around the content. And if you're not careful, you'll accidentally click an ad and end up somewhere else. So Google's saying your pages should be completely static. If you haven't loaded an image or you haven't loaded an ad yet, they should load as placeholders, and then you can load the ad later, but content shouldn't move around as the page renders. So that's cumulative layout shift is how much things move. So this is going to become really important, because Google has said from May this year, I guess that's around 3 or 4 months time away, they will be taking these metrics into account when they rank web pages. This isn't necessarily going to become a primary ranking factor. It's never going to outstrip links. It's probably along the same lines of the mobile and security and intrusive ads, things that they pushed in the past. But they're saying that effectively, if all else is equal and you're ranking on a page against someone who has better core web vitals than you, then they may outrank you. So this is becoming really important, and businesses need to ensure that they're scoring well, or at least not scoring poorer than their competitors. So DeepCrawl, towards the end of last year, we released an update that effectively tracks and analyzes the core web vitals metrics on every page that we render. You'll see at the same time we released about 6 other performance metrics: time to first bytes, DOM content loads, all sorts of things, and we're creating these dashboards for each of the core web vitals, so that you can see for my site, I rank generally very poorly, or here are the pages that rank perform poorly for cumulative layout shift. We're also allowing you to see these per segment. So again, if you're only interested in a given segment, or you're not interested in some segments, you can sort of filter those away. And the other cool thing about this is we've obviously added these metrics into Data Explorer. So like I showed you with segmentation, if you want to see for a given segment or a given dimension, your average core web vitals, your like I said, we're going to be releasing min-max core web vitals, so cumulative layout shift. You just need to go into Data Explorer and you will be able to see those. So here we are setting some performance and core web vitals metrics. And then if you want to see those on a segment, it's as easy as selecting a segment. Yeah, so that's core web vitals.
Awesome. And I guess one question that I get asked often is, what's the difference between what you can see in basically Search Console, what Google gives you for these metrics, and what Google's giving you? Is there any difference? Are they going to correlate and match up? Is quite common.
That's a really good question. So I guess the key kind of terms here are field data and lab data. So Google's numbers come from field data. That means that Google uses the Chrome browser to collect metrics. So as a Chrome user, when you visit a website, you have just calculated all of the core web vitals for that page, and if you fall into a sample, your browser will send your data to Google, and Google will store that across hundreds of thousands, millions, hundreds of millions of page loads. They'll then have kind of a representative average for lots of users and lots of devices and lots of network speeds, and that's how they are collecting data for their purpose. And that's a really good way of collecting data for Google's purpose, for ranking websites against each other. You probably do want to get lots and lots of user data, strip out the anomalies, and find some points in the middle where you're saying this page has this this core web vital, this cumulative layout shift, this largest contentful paint. But for SEOs, that's not necessarily good data. There's 2 big reasons for this. The first one is for Google to give you any of this information, the number of pages that they've, the number of visits they've, they have to have above a certain threshold of visits to a certain page to give you data. So we see this quite a lot for our clients, and for lots of other websites. You'll always have core web vitals data in PageSpeed API if you are looking at the home page, or the top 10, 100,000, 10,000 pages, but you won't have data for long tail pages, product pages that get visited a few times a year, and certainly you won't have those core web vitals data from Google in your development or your staging sites. So if you're developing something new and you're relying on data that you get from Search Console, the Crux dashboard, you basically have to release that thing, wait for lots of users to visit it, and then wait for Google to tell you whether your scores went up or down. So by using DeepCrawl, what we're doing is we crawl your sites all at once. We're calculating your core web vitals data, yes, on very, very powerful servers with very, very fast network speeds. But the idea is that we're calculating all of your core web vitals in one go, so they're all correct relative to each other. Now, those won't necessarily match with what Google's telling you, or what a user on a desktop computer with a relatively slow broadband connection has seen. But it does allow you to find the best performing or the worst performing parts of your site. It does allow you to crawl over crawl, compare things, see whether you're getting better or worse, and it does allow you to kind of compare your production site to a staging site. So, I mean, in my opinion, for SEOs, it's really important to use both sets of data, but it's also really important to understand the pros and cons of each. Yeah, I've probably rambled a bit much on that, so let's move on. Data connectors. As we said, connecting DeepCrawl to your kind of workflow, connecting your DeepCrawl insights and data to wherever you need them is one of our core missions for this year. At the end of last year, we released a few different connectors. I'm going to run through those really quickly. First one is the Data Studio connector, and anyone can use this. You just go to Data Studio, type in DeepCrawl, and you'll find it. This gives you high-level access to all of the data in your account. So you'll be able to put dashboards like this, the number of primary pages, the number of broken pages, trends over time. Really cool thing is that segmentation works with this, so you can also create segmented dashboards or start to compare segments, and that's a really good way for a lot of SEOs to start to build kind of a bespoke view of their data, and start to share things around their business. And we've actually, this is one of our most popular features that we released last year. The next updates, and this probably that doesn't mean much to anyone, but we have started, or we do integrate with Google BigQuery. So what this means is every time a crawl finishes, we'll copy all of the crawl data to BigQuery and give you access to it. So this obviously means that you can query data in BigQuery. You can use BigQuery's kind of machine learning algorithms. You can join in data from other data sets. But the reason we chose BigQuery as our first kind of big integration is that it natively connects to almost every BI tool, every data science tool. So if you use Tableau or Looker or Power BI, they will all just connect to BigQuery, and you'll instantly be able to get your DeepCrawl data in there, as well as it connects really well to any kind of programming language or data science. So if you use Python pandas or Jupyter notebooks, or I'm not a data scientist, but anything, BigQuery is a really good connection, a really handy connection to have. So we're really excited about that. That is relatively new. This isn't the announcement, but I don't think we've spoken about it too much in the past.
So what's a good use case? Because as you say, it's relatively new. You know, and this looks super technical, but potentially very powerful.
Yeah. So
what type of use case?
I guess one of the best uses of this that I've heard of our clients doing. We have a client who is a food delivery company, so takeaways. They have restaurants. They sort of work with restaurants everywhere, and they get people everywhere to use their app to order from those restaurants. And this company delivers food from the restaurants. So what they have done, they basically, they know where they have lots of restaurants, they know where they have lots of users, and they know where they don't have lots of users, or where they have people that don't really order all that often. So they know they've got a gap somewhere there. So what we worked with them to do is they took the Google search volume of all the relevant keywords. So I mean, I live in Dartford and Kent. So they took search volume for things like pizza in Kent, Chinese in Kent, all the restaurant names, sorry, in Dartford, all the restaurant names in Dartford. And so now they know searches in each area. And interesting, well, not really interestingly, maybe it's obvious, they found that where they had people that didn't really order from their app very much, they had more search volume. And so the next step was to figure out why they weren't getting traffic to their landing pages for those areas. And so that's where they brought in DeepCrawl's data and said, okay, here's a big tranche of areas where we have technical SEO problems, where we have content issues, where we have some canonicalization issues. That's probably the reason we're not ranking. That's probably the reason we're not getting the traffic in those areas. And that's probably, that's something we can work on immediately. But they also were able to find a big chunk of cities and neighborhoods where they didn't have technical SEO issues, they just weren't ranking well. And what they actually found was in those areas, the restaurants were really authoritative, the restaurants were outranking them, and they were able to just pick up a load of clients by investing more in paid search. And obviously, they will implement an SEO strategy to improve the authority of those pages. This is like I said, probably the most interesting use case for a BigQuery connector. And I also know that in a lot of businesses, they are moving all of their first-party data into BigQuery so that they can connect it to AdWords or DoubleClick to then use that in ad targeting. So that's really where DeepCrawl can add a lot of value over just creating dashboards and getting better visibility. All right, so those are the not everything we released in 2020, but those are the big things that I wanted to go over. Now the next few slides aren't necessarily comprehensive. We're working on a lot more. There are two things I wanted to show you about what's coming up, what you should start to see in the next few months. So, yeah, segmentation. If you use segmentation today, it is limiting in some ways. It really only works on a couple of screens that we have in the app. So the main report screen, you've got obviously Segment Manager, Data Explorer. But one of the big things we're working on at the moment is rolling out segmentation across all of the analysis views. So the first step of this is just implementing the segment filter that you'll be familiar with, so that you can start to see, for instance, an issues list for a given segment, or you can start to see the dashboard for a specific segment. After we've done that, and this won't be very long, this is a couple of months away, we're going to be implementing segment overview screens, so you can start to sort of compare and contrast your segments. If you are, not necessarily hands-on SEO, but maybe a head of digital or something, you'll be able to start comparing all of your segments. So if you've got markets, you'll be able to say that UK is doing better than Germany, and we're really excited about it. And I would say if you are in that position where you need to get sort of segment overview dashboards, please get in touch. My team is constantly looking to talk to clients with the challenges that we're trying to solve, so that we can sort of make sure that we're right in our assumptions, so that we can change things if we're wrong. So yes, segmentation everywhere is a big focus at the moment. And what's coming up next for our core kind of SEO insights development stream is portfolio insights. So a lot of our clients now have multiple websites. They might have 3 or 4, or they might have 10 or 100, or in some cases thousands. And it's within DeepCrawl, it's quite difficult to get a high-level overview of how your overall portfolio is performing. You'd literally have to click into every project today, have a look how it's doing, click on the next project. What we want to do is to start giving high-level insights of where you should be paying attention. What's what's really bad today, what's really good today, what's changed the most. We're also going to try and maybe not necessarily dumb down the data, but give more, I guess, give a business impact to what you're doing, or or the potential risk. So you won't see things like number of 404 pages, but you might see things like traffic at risk. I'll say the screenshot I've got here is a very early stage concept, and I would be surprised if the final product looked like this or had all of these features or numbers. But again, if you have this problem, I have 5 people, engineers, product people, that want to talk to you about how you work, and would love to build something that solves your kind of your problems or your challenges that you have in your day to day. Yeah, so that is all of my slides. Thank you. Unless you've got any other questions for now, Dave.
Yeah, we've had some coming through on
Oh yeah.
the Q&A and in the the kind of public chat as well.
Okay.
So we had a question from Alistair about Core Web Vitals. So Alistair said, "Love the CWV dashboards, but I noticed there isn't any recommendations. Will this be part of the UI in the future?"
Yes, it will. We will be really improving the recommendations that we put into, well, not only Web Vitals, but across the app. It's difficult to some extent for us um, to give really accurate recommendations, I suppose, because DeepCrawl finds symptoms, and it typically needs an SEO or someone really experienced to say this is the specific problem. So what we're going to start doing is saying, here are the things that typically cause these symptoms. Here's where you can read about canonicalization issues or hreflang or Core Web Vitals, and find out more about it. But the time where we can accurately sort of say this is your problem and this is why is a little bit further down the line. One thing that our CTO wants to do, and I am in no way promising this, is analyzing code to sort of say, here's the line of code that caused this problem. To me, it sounds like a moonshot, but it would be amazing if we could do that.
Yeah, well, always good to have a moonshot, isn't it? But that's a great question, and one that gets asked all of the time, and it is difficult because no two websites are the same, and there's no silver bullet for SEO. But obviously, we do want to help assist as much as we can within the app itself, with our technology and with our support and services as well. So thanks for the question, Alistair. We also had, this isn't really a question, but Brian asked about any tutorials for segmentation. I shared a link to that specific tutorial, which is part of our knowledge guides on the website. So if you do want to learn about any of the features on our website, you can go to deepcrawl.com/knowledge/guides, and we have all of those ones there. We also had a couple of questions in the Q&A box, mainly around Automator. So Brad asked, how do you actually integrate with a developer's pipeline? How does that work?
Yeah, so this is where we get quite technical. So effectively, let's not say all, most really good engineering organizations will have what's called a CI or CD pipeline, so continuous integration or continuous deployment. And that effectively means when they push code to their repository, GitHub or GitLab or wherever they store their code, the CI pipeline will build an environment. So it spins up some servers, deploys the code to it, and makes the code available, and will often also coordinate tests on that environment to see acceptance testing, unit testing. Does it work, basically? So what DeepCrawl does is we integrate into that pipeline, and it's relatively simple. If you have a bash script, which is a text file with 10 commands in it. and we just ask the engineering team, the DevOps team, to pop that bash script into their deployment pipeline. It differs but depending on the exact system that you're using. But we also have native integrations, things like you go to GitHub and just select DeepCrawl, and that's effectively it. It's just asking your DevOps team to place a text file in a certain folder, and that's what alerts DeepCrawl or Automator about the code change. That's what tells us where we should be crawling. Yeah,
Cool.
we haven't had any problems integrating. It's once we speak to a DevOps team, they know exactly what we're talking about.
Awesome. I think we've got time for one last question, which has come from Sarah, which I love. It's I actually spend a lot of time doing these manual checks myself. So does this put me out of a job?
Hopefully not. I suppose SEOs don't want to be spending a lot of their time manually checking every single engineering deployment that happens, especially as the engineering organization gets more and more agile. More and more of your day will be spent doing this. So the idea of Automator is to automate a lot of that mundane work, lots of the time you're spending just checking, have they broken the robots.txt file? Have they accidentally implemented no index across the site? And allow you to spend your time doing more strategic things, figuring out, again, what are the big opportunities you can be pursuing? What are the big risks that you should be mitigating? And not just chasing an engineering team to make sure they haven't put some broken links in, not to be making sure that people aren't doing things without your knowledge. So I suppose, you know, you're creating more time in your day for clever work, not the more mundane things.
Awesome. And not really a question here from Mirna, but Mirna says, since the three main metrics of the core web vitals must be met in order to be considered in the ranking calculation, it would be helpful to have an overview of the pages that met all three Google KPIs, which I think is really interesting and great feedback. And we love that kind of feedback at DeepCrawl, because that helps shape what we do in the tool. I don't know, Alec, if you have any kind of comments on that, or what's your initial reaction to that feedback?
No, I think that's a really good idea. I'll pass it on to the team. Adding new reports is a relatively simple thing that we do once a month. So we can definitely try to get that in the next month.
Awesome. Thanks very much for the feedback, Min. I really appreciate it. All right. I think that's pretty much all we have time for. I think there's one more slide for us to go through, just some follow-ups and actions. So as part of Automator, a lot of the people on this webinar obviously are current customers of DeepCrawl, but may have only just learned about Automator and its capabilities. If you want to find out more, please do get in touch. We actually have a promotion going on at the moment for existing customers, where you can save up to 30% on the automation hub. T's and C's do apply there, must say that. All of the white papers that you can see are also available on our Knowledge Hub, so you can go to knowledge/knowledge, and then from there access our SEO white papers. There's some really interesting white papers there, particularly the Digital Future report, which we commissioned with eConsultancy, which is a good read with some interesting stats. We also have our next webinar coming up on the 11th of March, which is going to be more of a kind of like a best practice webinar, which is about driving growth with tech SEO. And we will be, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we'll be sending out this recording. A recap will be published on the website. Before you go, please do fill out the survey. It takes less than 60 seconds to complete, and it will really help us kind of curate and shape the content that we deliver moving forward. So that's pretty much it. Thanks everyone for joining the first DeepCrawl Deep Dive series. Hope to see you all on our next webinar. Take care, stay safe. See you later.
Thank you.